To the Minister of Immigration, does he stand by his statement? Many members in this House will know just how much demand there is on managed isolation. If so, what advice, if any, has he received that improving utilisation of managed isolation and quarantine capacity could support the reunification of split migrant families?
The Honourable Chris Farfoy.
Mr Speaker, to the first part of the question, yes. To the second, I'm regularly advised by the Minister of COVID Response that demand for managed isolation continues to be high and is expected to be at full capacity well into this year. Utilisation rates of available spaces in managed isolation are currently already very high, but we are always looking for ways to improve and refine our processes to give us more options. It's important for the House to note that New Zealanders trust the government to maintain the system as our first and best defence against COVID while the vaccine is being rolled out.
Why then have 126 members of the Lion King production been allowed into New Zealand while nurses who arrived to meet our critical healthcare needs have been separated from their partners and children for a year?
Mr Speaker, the application that the member speaks of is under the other exceptions tranche of visas that were introduced as of June last year. Since that time, 6,500 exceptions on the other category have been approved, 1,800 for research and development, 1,300 for primary industries and 335 for manufacturing. While the member might want to focus on a small number of entertainers, I'd also note that the hotels, the bars and restaurants that would benefit from that particular production happening are desperately calling out for this kind of business.
Can he explain how a migrant nurse who left New Zealand last month is now returning as a critical healthcare worker with her family, taking up 2 MIQ rooms, which would have only been 1 room had he allowed her family to travel here without her?
Mr Speaker, as has already been mentioned, I think last week, was that there is an anomaly within the system which we are currently looking at, and we also thank the 4,500 critical health workers that we have brought into the country since the borders closed.
Point of order, Mr Speaker. I don't think that he addressed the specific question that I asked. The anomaly's got nothing to do with the question that I asked.
I'll get the member to ask it again. I thought he came very close if he didn't, but we'll ask the question again and I can check the answer.
Can he explain how a migrant nurse who left New Zealand last month is now returning as a critical healthcare worker with her family, taking up 2 MIQ rooms?
I'm going to stop the member now. I'm going back to what the Minister said and he did address the question. All he had to do was say yes, and he had.
Supplementary question. Has he received advice that a trans-Tasman bubble would allow him to reunite migrant nurses with their families without those nurses having to leave New Zealand and their jobs in a sector that is critically short-staffed?
Mr Speaker, as I said in the answer to the primary question, we continually and regularly get advice from the Minister of COVID-19 Response about the utilisation of managed isolation spaces and if we can do better in some of those processes, what we might be able to do for many of people who would like to come into New Zealand but cannot at the moment because of the very limited amount of managed isolation spaces available.